So I figured, okay, well, instead of Bud Light Limes today, I'm going to take home one of these little samples of hydrocodone-based cough medicine and take a shot of that, and let's see how that works out. And that decision, that one decision, led into a 7 year gradually descending world of addiction.
Wow.
Descending into hell is what I was going to say. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was it. And, for the longest time, I was a responsible drug addict. I could, I knew I could wean myself. The supply was tied to work. So if a weekend was coming up, I could ration my source over the weekend. Um, I could wean myself down if I was going to go for a longer period of time without needing it, so the same supply would last.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today, I've got Brett Cordes with me. Brett, like me, is a medical doctor, and we both have seen the beauty and the fantastic things that happen when we can help others. And we both have identified in our roles, we love our roles as physicians, as doctors, as helpers. And that is so wonderful. But we both have also come to a situation where indeed this is no longer possible. This is where indeed maybe our choices have actually interfered with our possibility to go out there. And that is so hard to admit and so hard to say. So today's interview is indeed getting quite close to me. And I need to give that as a preamble because we are talking about a lot of things very close to my heart. I guess these are the best interviews when truly you don't talk about those things where everything is in the past and everything is gone, but those things that are really important and that you're just still dealing with. Brett, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Hmm. Wow. How do you start such a discussion? Brett, tell me, how did you lose your job? Yeah, okay, that's not really how we go. Although, of course, that's where the money is. But tell me about the Brett, the ear, nose, throat surgeon that we saw 5 years, 8 years ago. Who was that dude?
Well, like you said, how do we start such a discussion? I will say it's easier because we've both been there.
Hmm.
And so there's not going to be any need for me to over explain things because you do, in fact, know and understand. Um, but 8 years ago, I would have been, let's see, 2025, I would have been about 7 years out of residency. Um, and, I would describe myself as kind of a young, overachieving, kind of a hot shot, so to speak, coming out of residency. I was, and these aren't my words, but I have been told that I was kind of the golden child coming out of residency, which people will see is very pertinent in terms of my story because, golden child pedestal. The higher you are, the longer you fall. So it will prove to be pertinent. But I mean, I was loving life. Um, I was a young physician. Within probably 2.5 to 3 years, I had built my practice up to 100% capacity. I had a beautiful, loving wife. We had two kids. We lived in the suburbs outside of Houston. I worked within the Texas Medical Center. Um, Three cars in the driveway, lawn that was always cut nicely, I might add, because I did it myself. But yeah, I mean, living the dream. And I really don't like that term, living the dream, because so many people um, make fun of it. But I truly was living my dream. Life was good.
Beautiful. then again, you don't get to that point in your career without major, major sacrifice. I mean, for those of you out there who don't know, that both Brad and me, by the time we would have gotten to that part, we would have been actually quarter of a century sitting at a school or in libraries to get to that point. You've got your 13 years at school, then you've got your medical studies to become a doctor, then you specialize into your field. And in my case, that's 7 years in anesthesia. You guys are a bit faster in the States, but then again, it just doesn't stop there. So we are talking a huge amount of dedication, huge days, even longer nights. And with that, I don't mean the partying. That is a part and parcel of it. But no, that's a huge amount of sacrifice. And with that comes often enough this kind of, I love it how you described it, the type A, the overachiever. I was exactly that. And I don't think I was ever called a golden boy, but the implication was there. And we identify ourselves with that, isn't it? It's did you, when you look back into your childhood, was external validation important for you? What others say? How, what the praise that your mum and dad gave you, or maybe not gave you? What drove you to be that successful man?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. External validation. I mean, I had like a stage 4 metastatic case of the need for external validation. It was it was unbelievable. And yes, it probably started with my parents, but mostly my father. Um, and at no point during my childhood did he ever or my mom ever pressure me to perform. However, my father is a PhD in mathematics, so he was a full professor at the university, local university. My mom was an English instructor. My dad was very close to a scratch golfer. He was something like a 1500 rated chess player. He played on a bowling team and would routinely bowl in the mid 200s. He played college basketball at Stanford. And so, oh, and to top it all off, he's 6'8". So my hero, so to speak, was my dad, and he was literally a superhero in my eyes. And so, and he did not dish out compliments willy nilly. You had to earn a compliment from him, and you had to earn his pride in you. And so when you got that,
Hmm.
it meant the world. So I'm sure that's where, the external validation
Hmm.
started. Yeah.
Interesting. So a high pressure environment for a young boy growing up and then becoming a teen. It's I can recognize that. It was not. I come actually from the wrong side of the tracks, so there was never much money there. There was certainly I was the first one who went to higher education. I think I was the first one who actually went to finish school at 13 years. Everyone else was blue collar. So,
Hmm.
but then again, there was also this expectation. Wow, here you go, and it never seemed enough. It never seemed enough. And
Hmm.
throughout my career, I was accumulating an alphabet soup behind my name with titles here and things there. And as soon as I had one, I was going for the next one. I could never celebrate wins. I could never be
Hmm.
just happy with what I just had achieved. Was that a similar thing with you?
Oh, it was exactly that. In fact, um, I was talking to a much younger physician. She's in her early 30s. Um, and she was talking about how apparently it's a thing for physicians to start to struggle a little bit at years 5 through 7. kind of like the 7-year itch, I guess, in a marriage. I had not heard that, but when I was kind of recounting my story and recounting the chronology of everything, it was exactly 7 years into private practice where, I had been climbing the mountain for so long. I had been
Mm.
crawling and scratching
Yeah.
and bleeding and sweating for so long. And then I get there, I'm at the top of the mountain. I've surpassed my own expectations. I met my dad's expectations. We all know how important that was. Um, and I surpassed many of my colleagues. And so I looked around and I'm like, well, now what? What, what do we do now? What's next? Um, and
Uh,
so I often describe it as bored. I don't think bored is the right term. I think unfulfilled
yeah,
is what I was experiencing at that time.
yeah.
And that was a major segue in to my eventual substance abuse. And also, definitely, it was part of the burnout that I was experiencing professionally.
Mm. Isn't it interesting? You push, 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 because you're just seeking for that approval. And approval for us has the same kind of neurochemical transmitter flow as your first love. It's a dopamine. It's dopamine and serotonin that get released when a patient is grateful or when you are doing a good job and you know that you have changed his life in front of you. The the initial tears of sadness in a patient that you turn into tears of joy and happiness. Now, this is a beautiful ego booster if there is one.
Mm.
And because I can probably say that we both are very good in our jobs, that we were constantly getting this dopamine fix there. The problem then, of course, is our receptors get used to that. You get used to a certain amount of achievement, a certain amount of dopamine flow, etc. And then our receptors are
Mm.
basically down regulating, which means you get less and less and less joy from the same amount of dopamine. We see that with substance abuse, we see that with so many other things. So after all, your beautiful first love or the first few months of a new relationship, well, after 3 months, that is gone. And then the reality hits you. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
I had not thought about it like that until this very second. And because of that, I mean, while you were talking about the dopamine, something made sense to me for the first time in 20 years. Uh, Around that time, between years 5 to 7, I would pick something once or twice a year to train at really hard
Yep,
and then to accomplish.
yep,
And so, for example, running a 40-yard dash was one of them. Dunking a basketball was one of them. Kicking a field goal from 50 yards was one of them. And my wife was like, what's going on? Why are you doing? And I was like, oh, I guess I'm kind of bored at work and I'm just up for a challenge. I want a
uh,
challenge. But
yeah,
what I wanted was the dopamine.
mm,
And
exactly.
I just realized why I was doing that. So
And there's
thank you.
nothing no, but I mean, at the same token, isn't it amazing? Because the same habit, creating a new project or taking a new skill to learn, is actually something very positive. We know it when we look at our brain and Alzheimer's prevention, that learning new skills, becoming ambidextrous, etc., we are challenging our brain and therefore we're keeping alive, we're keeping going, and you're growing as a man. So there's nothing wrong with that on the outside. But if you actually look at why you're doing it, I think there's often quite a story to be told. And so many of us, we don't have the emotional intelligence to recognize that until way later. Because it's not just the good habits that you have created there, seeking those new things, which incidentally, I try to do the same. I try to do it on purpose. That's to create a new habit, to create a new skill. And I get lots of joy out of that. But yes, I think basically the same drivers. Now, we don't always get it right. In this case, we chose actually maybe a good coping mechanism. We also choose not so good coping mechanisms. When did
Boy, is
alcohol
that true.
when did alcohol come into your life?
So I had a little bit of a backstory because opiates was my drug of choice.
Uh-huh.
But I had always been a social drinker. Way back in high school, I would drink on the weekends, and then of course in college. But I was a good student, so I would work hard, but I would play hard as well. And alcohol was good. I mean, it was cool. I enjoyed it. I looked forward to drinking alcohol when I was about ready to party. Um, but it was a completely different story when opiates came into the picture. So for me, opiates came into the picture when I was 19 years old, and I had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Shit.
And I, took some opiates after a biopsy or this or that or this or that. And at that time, they felt really good. I did not even finish the bottle of pain medication I had. It never occurred to me to keep taking them when I wasn't in pain, but they did feel very good. I did have a euphoric feeling with them. So, that being said, I remembered that all these years later. And so, around year 5 of being in private practice, so this would have been 2000 and about 2015. It was a Friday afternoon. And generally, what I did on Friday afternoons, I would finish up work, I'd get off early, drive back home. My wife and I would hang out by the pool, and I'd drink a couple of Bud Light limes. And that's how my weekend started. So I figured, okay, well, instead of Bud Light limes today, I'm going to take home one of these little samples of hydrocodone based cough medicine and take a shot of that. And let's see how that works out. And that decision, that one decision, led into a 7-year, gradually descending world of addiction.
Wow.
Descending into hell is what I was going to say. But yeah, that was it. And, for the longest time, I was a responsible drug addict. I knew I could wean myself. The supply was tied to work. So if a weekend was coming up, I could ration my source over the weekend. Um, I could wean myself down if I was going to go for a longer period of time without needing it, so the same supply would last. And my counselors in rehab were really amazed by that because apparently most drug addicts can't do that. They can't ration. That's why it's so bad. So, like I said, I was a air quote responsible drug addict until I wasn't. I wouldn't use at work. I wouldn't use when I was on call in the beginning. But by the time the end came, I was using at work. Well, I needed it to function even normally at the end. So there was nothing that was safe, so to speak, from me using opiates to get through toward the
Wow.
end.
Wow. What happened to you? Let's say if you were to remember back to that fateful Friday afternoon, you were probably an educated guess here that you were probably running at a level of stress and a level of anxiety that was pretty much above Zen level, let's put it like that. There was probably the underlying constant current, torrent, shall I say, of anxiety. Is that fair to assume for the time being?
It is absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I would be the same. In my case, there was some PTSD that raised my level of arousal and to a higher level. And I always thought that was a good thing because as a doctor, it was hard for me to be caught out. So when it came to identifying maybe a certain problem or picking up an emergency within anesthesia at an early stage, I would be very good at that. So therefore, I always made it good. And situational awareness, man, in nowadays world, that's something you need. So all good things, but this constant switched on to 100%, 105, 110%, that wears out the engine. And
Mm.
so that was the level at 1500, 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. that afternoon. And then you took the opiate. What happened to that anxiety?
Um, well, I mean, again, it's like you're telling my story. Um, the anxiety went away. The anxiety lessened, and my joy for life heightened.
Mm,
All of my negative emotions lessened or were completely numbed and muted.
mm,
And all of the dopamine oriented emotions
yeah.
shot through the roof. And, you know, when you hear when you hear people say, you know, when they're first introduced to their drug of choice, it's the best, most euphoric feeling you've
Mm,
ever had in your
mm,
life.
mm,
And what is interesting is that the way I felt after that Friday afternoon cough medicine far surpassed what I felt when I was 19 taking opiates for
mm,
actual pain. I
absolutely.
mean, it's not even comparable at all. It's just, and that's why the addiction began with me is because it was as though my dad was complimenting me all the time. That's what that euphoria felt like, but all the time and
Yeah,
automatic.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
totally different experience. But yes, I was having my most of my anxiety and depression around that time centered around the fact that you know, my wife and I had a couple of kids, but as the older child was going through puberty and having just normal teenage angst and whatnot, normal stuff
Mm,
that every parent goes through, I did not have the tools
mm,
as a father, and so you know this drug, these opiates became a crutch by which I leaned on um, well until I couldn't do it anymore.
wow. And that's so beautiful, isn't it? It is the way you describe, when I say beautiful, I say beautiful is, with that I refer to the fact that it is so blatantly obvious to both of us right now how deficient we were. We were focusing so much on that one pillar in our life, being that doctor, being that man, putting in the extra mile, but then never exploring how to put even close to similar into maybe a relationship, maybe into your
Mm,
role as a father, maybe into your other things. I mean, you looking at you, there is you're a very sports dedicated man as well, and that what comes out in your history. So at least you looked at your physical fitness and you looked at your body, and probably to a degree in your nutrition. So the standard American diet was probably rather not playing a big role in your life. So kudos to you. You at least covered two pillars, but all the other pillars, the emotional intelligence, the coping mechanisms for us,
mm,
and for us then being able to role model them to our children, we both have been sorely deficient in that, I would dare to say. Guilty as charged here. And again, as I said, this is an interview that gets close to me because our stories are so similar in the way that we have that life. Ugh, I want to say that we have shown up for ourselves, but then at the same token, it's probably unfair to take all the blame on us. It's so easy for us as people who have fallen off the path, fallen off the pedestal, to take the whip out and constantly, I'm an addict. I'm so bad. How dare I? Everything that has happened is all my fault. And that's a very, very easy thing to do. But no, for example, in a relationship, in parenting, it takes two to tango. So in this case, your relationship, and you said you had a loving wife. Um, that's great. I would have said exactly the same thing at that time because I didn't realize that my relationship was not fulfilling neither her needs nor my needs, and that was an ongoing pouring petrol onto the fire of my anxiety. Um, how was that relationship? Were you ever able to talk honest? Does she know about you taking opiates?
Again, I can't remember exactly, but let's just say I started using in 2015.
Yeah.
Um, she began to suspect something was going on in early 2017.
Yeah.
And then she caught me using, I think, later that year in 2017. And so she was aware. And of course, I lied, I manipulated, I gaslit her
Hmm.
indefinitely. So she thought that I dabbled in it and that I was then going to stop. And you
Hmm.
mentioned how easy it is for us to self-flagellate and blame ourselves for, well, a lot of things. And I'm the same way. But even that is grandiosity. Um, it's almost like negative grandiosity because the only person, the only entity, the only circumstance that's powerful enough to derail me is myself, of course, right?
Uh,
No one else and nothing else has that kind of power. That's again,
uh,
it's ego. It's ego.
uh.
Guilt. Yeah.
It's so hard, isn't it? I mean, in all fairness, even nowadays, with all the post-traumatic growth I've accumulated, with all the bloody emotional intelligence that is flowing out of my ears, it is even nowadays I still question the balance, and I'm oscillating between I'm such a bad man, and then actually I cross-examine them that no, that's actually bullshit, and no, it's all their fault. And a lot of shit has happened in my life. Okay, I have had parents where there was some psychopathology going, some personality disorders there. I have had no role models. I have had external trauma. I have been the victim of a gang assault, etc., etc., etc. I had more shit on my plate than many other people probably. So, but where is the middle there? Where where are we? And I think it's our duty nowadays to cross-examine these thoughts. And I think if there's one gift that I've been given now with all that shit, is that I get all these thoughts and that I actually take a moment to examine, okay, is that actually true what you're thinking? And the vast majority of what I'm thinking is not true, in all fairness. But the immediate emotional response to a thought remains still the same. It doesn't matter if that was a saber-toothed tiger really standing in front of me and wanting to eat me, or if that was an email that is coming in and I know, oh, that's probably a bad thing. Emotional response is the same. Uh, so, and our physical response. Oh, God. So you had the opiates there, and they took your life back to normal from an anxiety level and distress level back down to normal. Did your wife you used other means? Often enough, alcohol is a very accepted way of coping in society. Did your wife drink, and or did she? What were her ways of unwinding?
I mean, she was a social drinker. Meaning if we went out to eat or we went to a party, she would
Yeah,
have a couple of glasses of wine.
yeah.
Every now and then, she would have a half a glass of wine at night to take the edge off. But that was maybe 3 times a month.
All right.
No, I mean, and I was always amazed at her ability. I mean, life was like Groundhog's Day for her, right? The movie. She would wake up with just this pure, clean slate, as if nothing, bad or untoward happened the days or weeks before that. Ready to tackle the day, ready to tackle problems as if they were brand new problems. I was always astonished and amazed by that because she didn't need a crutch. It was,
Was that
she was
because
something.
absolutely, and some of us are innate, so it's inborn in them, or maybe they've had at a very early stage had some great role modeling, some great teachers there. Or did she actually do courses, etc.? Was that something she actively did and was trying to teach you?
Um, in terms of life or in terms of parenting?
Both, because it's a sort of a Venn diagram overlapping here a bit. But in life, if she was able to get up every morning and draw a line under the past, so to speak, and say, okay, yesterday was yesterday, today is a new day. How can we do that? Again, I can do that now, but it still takes work for me to do that. It's still
Mhm.
I actively have to create habits and follow those habits to be able to do so. She was seemingly was a natural. Or was there anything that she tried? Hey, come on, let's work together, Brett. Let's do something together to help you.
Not really. And, of course, hindsight is 2020, and I'm saying this looking back on it, although I was amazed in real time um, at her. I mean, she just seemed to be the best wife. She was the best wife, the best mom, the best daughter, the best sister. She really was. But she was a good player, but she wasn't a coach, so to speak.
Ah, okay,
So she didn't. And again, I was hiding this so well for so long.
true,
There didn't appear to be a need for it.
true. No, good point. Very well said. I know that both you and I are going or have gone through a divorce. What brought the end? You speak so highly of her, and here you are, you got your shit now together. But obviously, something happened in the in between. Are you happy to talk about it?
Well, I'm not happy to talk about it, but yeah, I'm certainly game to talk about it.
Because we need to,
Um,
because it's part of our relationship. Here we are.
right.
We fell from our pedestal. We both had to either give up. We'll come to that in a moment. Why did we not? Why are we still here talking? And the other question is, okay, so what happened to our relationships around us? Because that's often a major change. Well, here you are. Here we are, I need to say.
Yeah. Well, one of the many things that I've learned during formal treatment for addiction and just what I've self learned over the last several years is that I definitely have some narcissistic tendencies. And if anyone knows, not that I have a, NPD or anything, but I definitely have more than one trait, let's put it that way. And so falling from a high pedestal for someone with narcissistic characteristics is extremely difficult because your identity is being compromised. And I completely lost my sense of self when I lost my job and everyone found out what was going on. Um, and it was the addiction that caused the divorce. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It was the behavior that I modeled when I was active in my
Mm,
disease.
yeah,
I relapsed a couple of times,
yeah,
and everything she did was totally fair. She told me, I can't do this forever.
yeah.
You know, and if you continue to
Mm,
use,
yeah.
then I'm gonna have to go my separate way, and that's what happened.
And oh, it's beautifully said, because there is quite a sense of betrayal in the loved ones that are around us. How often have we made promises and then broken them? Let that be yes, I'm gonna go with my kid to play ball or whatever it is, and then you don't because you're hungover or
Mm,
because you're using, or in this case to your wife. We underestimate that as humans in general terms. We often try to look over that. And I said it so broadly as humans because it's not just addicts, it is just the when we don't show up for ourselves, we very clearly message something to the others who then shy away. And I think that's so important. I think
mhm,
we can do so much better. And I think a huge amount of success 80% at least, is just showing up. And even that basic thing we can't get right.
mm,
So I think let's be clear about that. And it's beautiful that your wife was actually open and she had a level of emotional intelligence that is probably well above many others
mm,
because she was very clear. Here I am. This is how I feel. This is why I feel like that. And here are the consequences. That is beautiful. So many other people, they are in their own turmoil. They have gone through their own trauma. They have never had a chance to develop this emotional intelligence. And that's so hard. So if two broken people who have got no coping mechanisms live together, well, guess what? This is not
mm.
going to end up nicely. Here there was seemingly quarter of a broken person, and the reason I say that is even if your wife looks so beautiful from the outside here, I'm sure there were things in her depth that needed repairing. But that's a completely different story. Um,
Yeah.
so I think here you are. Bloody hell. I mean, bloody hell. Why are we both still here? We both now it's no, I want to say first something about narcissistic traits. Only because you're a type A personality and only because you are a go-getter and achiever does not necessarily mean you're a narcissist. Ego, probably yes, I give you that. But as part of my emotional intelligence work, there are not many questionnaires I have not filled out and tests I have not done, especially narcissists, because my wife, as part of the divorce, probably has also said, you know, not so nice words to me. So I checked them out. Am I actually? And no. So I say, but any, yeah, okay, so I've done the tests. But then again, it is, so when you say narcissist, why do you say that?
Well, for one, it helps explain some of my character defects, which is a recovery term. At least it was a recovery term at my
Yeah,
rehab,
sure.
um, and also in AA. But it helps explain perfectionism.
Yeah,
It helps explain the need for external validation.
yeah,
Um, and I've always had an ego, I guess, so to
yeah,
speak. Um, but it makes sense,
mm,
I'll say. And
yeah,
I did the same thing. I did exactly the same thing you did, which is, um, am I a narcissist? I mean, do I almost qualify as having narcissistic personality disorder? And the answer is no.
yeah,
That's why I say I have
mm,
narcissistic characteristics.
mm,
So yeah, it explains
yeah.
some of the negative things and also some of the positive things in my life. You know.
Mm. I love what you say. I love it because it is certainly when you look into that with the glasses of an addict coming out of a certain recovery system like AA. Like you, I've gone through an AA based system, and all the terminology that you use are absolutely fine. And I think when you start off, when you need to get rid of a substance use and abuse, then to use that system, which starts with hi, I'm Stefan, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Brett, I'm an whatever label you put on there. And I am a narcissist. That means taking control, taking ownership, because it's something that often lacks in the lives of people who abuse drugs. I absolutely go with that. But for the rest of your life, to label yourself, I am an alcoholic, is has its own risks and downfalls. I think we need to take ownership. Absolutely, 100% yes. But I would rather say I am a man who was emotional broken and who used alcohol to excess. Because that I like to be a bit more careful, because I am is such a powerful statement. I am strong. I am lovable because I'm lovable. I am worthy because I'm worthy. These are all affirmations that go straight past the ego, straight into the subconscious. So if I'm saying I'm a failure, I'm I'm useless, I'm a fat slob, I'm unlovable, I'm 58, no one will ever love me. Well, this is all what I can reinforce. So which wolf do you feed? The good one or the bad one. So it's that kind of balance. Where do we stop labeling us negative, and where do we start accepting, okay, this is maybe like your wife did. That was yesterday, so today how do we get up and actually address the same problems? There's still the same amount of anxiety, there's still the same amount of core beliefs, etc. What can we work on today to go away from our need to use the drug or the alcohol, etc.? How
Yeah, and that reminds me of, I'm sorry, that
uh,
reminds me of probably one of the top 4 or 5 principles or tools that I've learned in recovery, which is the fact that two seemingly opposing things can be true at the same time. When I was active in my disease, and even just normally,
yeah,
I if I'm not mentally and emotionally present and healthy, I will fall into a black and white thinking of things. And so, for example, you know, back then, if I didn't feel like, and I was having anxiety because I didn't feel like I wanted to go to, one of my child's friends' birthday parties.
yeah,
It was an internal struggle because on one hand, I'm thinking, well, a good father doesn't dread going to a 3 year old's birthday party. A good father, would be excited about this or that. It never occurred to me that both things could be true. I could be
exactly,
a good father and also not want to go, and
exactly.
I've applied that principle in all of my life, and it seriously has revolutionized how I think in my perspective. Just that little perspective shift. Oh my
Exactly.
gosh, both of those things can be true. I mean, it seems so simple, but
Oh,
it's
it's beautiful.
effective.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's radical self-compassion, isn't it? To actually to accept an emotion, to accept a thought, to accept a feeling as it washes over you or comes through your head, and not feel guilty about it. Just be curious about it and say, "Oh, that's an interesting thought," or "That's an interesting emotion." I often compare it with you being in the ocean and there's a big wave coming towards you. You can be angry with that wave. You wave, I hate you, go away. The wave doesn't give a damn. So you might as well either learn to surf or dive underneath it or let the force of the water just throw you around. That's the only thing you can do. But like a wave coming, it's going. So it's only there for a short period of time. And it's the same with our neurochemicals, with these thoughts, with those waves of emotions. And that's the freedom that I nowadays experience. My negative emotions, they're still there. There are days when I feel anxious, there are days when I feel ratty, there are days when I feel down, and I just accept it for that. And nowadays I've got some skills to actually deal with that, or even if none of the things work, my techniques, then I just say, well, bugger off. Then I just live it and just accept it for what it is. And that's cool. That's cool. Oh man. How long have you now been out of recovery?
So when I initially went in for treatment, it
Yeah.
was July of 2020.
Perfect. Wow.
Um, and I did relapse a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going on. And this is interesting, and anyone who's an addict or alcoholic will be interested in this. I actually don't know how long I've been sober. I stopped counting. In AA, you hit milestones: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 1 year, and then
Yeah.
yearly after that. Um, but it's somewhere around 2 years that I've been completely not just clean but sober and happy. Um, so and
Hey,
I
hey,
do
hang
not
on, brother. Hang on. There are three different
sober.
milestones here. Sober, happy, not
Yeah.
using. I think a relapse is just indicating that there is either so much new trauma that has occurred that your body had to flip back to old coping mechanisms because the new ones are not yet strong enough to actually deal with all the new shit, number one. Or it just means that you have lapsed in your self-care and that you were again burning the candle on both ends and in the middle. So I think a relapse is not something to be worried about. In fact, those of you out there, hey, in your first year out of addiction, 80-90% relapse chance. And I think that's okay. It just shows that you have got so much to learn and so much to grow. So congratulations when that happens to you. Just learn the lessons and figure out why it has occurred to you. So it is, I think, let's be clear about that. But I love how you say that the joy comes back after, in your case, 3 years, if you calculate it like that. That is amazing. Uh, that is amazing. Why do I say that? We all have got the same thing. You come out of recovery and you think, yes, I've done it. Then in reality, the journey only starts, isn't it? You are essentially just growing normal. Even your taste buds, when you drink a lot of alcohol, your taste completely changes. And I remember maybe half a year, 3/4 of a year after stopping drinking, I stopped at the roadside, picked up some strawberries, and had a sneaky one before I went home. And I thought, wow, this is the most beautiful strawberry. I've never tasted a strawberry like that. What is that? And I nearly was going back to asking about the different types of strawberries. And in reality, it was my taste buds have finally come back to a normal kind of thing, not something that was constantly altered, changed. And that the amount of dopamine I experienced from that strawberry was finally coming back to normal. But otherwise, I would have expected that 200-fold kickstart from 3 or 4 glasses of Chardonnay. So it takes
Right.
time. It takes time to change. It takes time to grow. It takes time to heal. And I think that is what you have just described there. How beautiful is
Y-
that?
Yeah. And, just like it takes time for taste buds to return, uh, same thing with emotions themselves.
Yeah.
It takes anyone who has been through recovery or known someone in recovery, when you initially get sober, when you initially start attempting to tackle life without this crutch, the emotions are very, very poignant,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of crying, a lot of because essentially I was experiencing these emotions for the first
Mhm.
time. They had been dulled for so long
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
anger, fear, shame, guilt, those negative emotions hit different, as the youngsters would say, when you're sober, especially when you're newly sober. Yeah, I agree with that.
Huh. That's true. And that was the weird thing we had, where I was in a 4-week rehab, and we had every morning, 10 o'clock, we had a feeling session. Did you have something similar? Sitting around the
Yep.
circle? Oh, yep. There was basically an hour of not hiding and an hour of you never knew what was coming because there was no schedule, there was no nothing. You were just sitting in a circle, no sunglasses, no hat, nothing in your hands, nothing to hide, nothing to distract. And
Yep.
there was a leaden silence. No one wanted to talk. And then someone said, "Oh, I hated that you yesterday ate all the chocolate cookies." Suddenly, there was joy, there was hate, there was anger, there was sadness, tears. And it was all actually practicing emotions and experiencing emotions without running away from them. And that was the most dreaded session, but also probably the most valuable session in recovery, to actually accept that emotions are just that. They're just beautiful things that come. Some of them are not so nice, others are really beautiful, but they are part of life. And the more we can accept that, the better. It might sound stupid what we are saying to someone who is not obviously in addiction. If I was to ask you, Brett, how many people do you think are addicted out there in the population? What would you say?
That's a great question. Now, are we talking about addiction to substances, or do
You can,
behaviors count?
you, yeah, oh, yeah, exactly. You're nailing it already. We both know what we are talking about here. Typically,
Yeah.
if it depends on which kind of statistics you read. I would say probably 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 people have got a chemical addiction. They're chemically addicted. So that is either drugs or alcohol, nicotine, those kind of things. If you
Yep.
then add in behavior, like what's your screen time, and I allow you to choose somewhere a cutoff there, what would you then say?
I would say the general population would have an addiction rate shockingly close to 100%.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Absolutely. I'm with you there 100%. And we often joke in medicine there is nothing 100%. If you have an MCQ multiple choice question and it's always or it's never or it's 100%, you know that's a wrong answer.
Yeah.
Yet when it comes to that particular point, I nowadays in the Western society agree with you because addictions are so prevalent, and many of them are actually celebrated in our society. For example, if you're a self-made man, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're working 120 hours a week, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I only need 5 hours of sleep. The moment you hear that, you know that's an addiction. And I can assure you that's a heap of bullshit. There are very, very, very few people. There are some people who indeed can prosper on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. They are an absolute minority. Reality is you need 8 to 9 hours of good quality sleep. And the vast majority of people who say, no, 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 I don't need that, that's bullshit. We meet them when they're around 50 with their first heart attack or with their metabolic chaos. No two ways around it. So I love it what
Hmm.
you say. We need to be very careful with our self-care. I mean, you ended up in rehab. What happened to your private practice? What happened to your what was your the story of your medical downfall without going into much detail? Because there's obviously the issue we were both doctors and we were responsible for others. Therefore, we are held to a higher level of responsibility. And the various medical councils around the world want to protect the patients. That's their job. So, what happened to you there?
So the in my case, the Texas Medical Board became aware of my substance use, and so my license was suspended.
Exactly.
And then I was mandated to go to one of only 6 treatment facilities in or around Houston
Yeah.
for 90 days.
Nice.
And then I had to sign a contract when I came back to work
Yeah.
to be randomly drug tested
Absolutely.
and several different stipulations. And like you said, it's very easy uh, for physicians to develop a nasty attitude toward their state medical board. But,
Oh,
you have to remember that protecting the public is their primary responsibility.
exactly.
And so that they did. I will say that the Texas Medical Board is really good at protecting the public, if you know what I mean. It wasn't
Yeah,
a pleasant experience to deal with them, but you know they
yeah,
wanted to keep the public
sure, sure.
safe from me,
Yeah, yeah,
for sure.
yeah. No, when it comes to the New Zealand Medical Council, I can only speak in the highest tone to them. They have been protecting the public, but also they have been supporting me. They have been there and try to do their best ultimately in their position. So I think there I want to speak out for certainly in the New Zealand situation. They have been actually superb. Some of the consequences we don't like your license is suspended. Okay, I see it.
Oh, oh, can I go get the door real quick?
Oh, hell yeah. Go, 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 go.
Okay, all right. Give me just
Absolute.
1 second.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that.
No trouble at all. All good.
I'm back.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Crisis averted.
Oh, beautiful. No trouble there at all. Hey, thank you very much. And I know we have spent shitloads of time here. Do you need to go? Is there any pressure on you?
No,
No,
no. This
that's
was
good.
I was having some furniture delivered, and
Oh, perfect.
it's
Perfect.
we're good to go.
Good. Fantastic. Okay, no, that's wonderful. What we'll do is I go back to the medical council and I start off. So 5 seconds pause, then I start talking, and then I segue. Where did I want to go? Ah, yeah, finances. Fucking hell, finances. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, fine. 5 seconds. For New Zealand, I can't speak more highly of the medical council. They have been doing a sterling job. They have got a great responsibility, and it is difficult for them to make these decisions. Yet, whatever happened, I never really felt that they were not there for me as well. I think that needs to be said, and I want to speak that out so clearly because as doctors, as addicts, we are hiding. Okay, we are such good hiders. Let's say as an alcoholic, you're waking up in the morning, you're hiding your hangover, you're hiding during the day that you're sort of maybe running at 80% or 90%. We are then hiding that we buy alcohol. We are hiding drinking the alcohol. We are hiding the alcohol itself. And then we are hiding that we are drunk. And then we go to bed. So that is often our life as an addict. So we are very good in fooling ourselves and fooling others. When it comes to the medical council, they understand that and they see our behaviors as what they are. So I think there is a lot of insight there. And with the hiding, doctors especially, we are under the impression that, my goodness, if it comes out that I have done X or Y, that's the end of me. And it probably is the end of you as you have been. And that's probably a good thing. The old phoenix need to burn. The old person, the old you who has been using is probably not the best version of yourself. But for that, you need help. And I think the Medical Council here in New Zealand and hopefully in other parts of the world can be of help to assist you there, because most of us don't know what facilities are around, what is time tested, what works for doctors, etc. Which facilities provide actually the privacy. When it came to my story, I have to say that privacy was always well guarded and I was protected. So I was not hung out there to dry. So there were a lot of positive things that I need to say. And I want to encourage anyone out there who is indeed thinking, oh my God, should I seek help or not? The answer is yes, seek help. And because you will be so grateful in the long run and you will have a good outcome. Doctors who are using opiates or using alcohol, etc., there's an 80% rehabilitation rate and going back to work. So these are the statistics in Australia and USA. We don't have statistics in New Zealand, to be specific about that. But please, guys, there is hope out there. There's help out there. But it's a rough ride because the life that you have been living is probably changing. Man, what would you say to that? This was my take, my personal experience here in New Zealand. You were speaking as an American who maybe the American system is less kind on doctors. What would you recommend doctors out there who are still in the hiding space?
Well, I will answer that question. First, let me speak on my experience. Um, in the states, it's each state has their own medical board. So it really depends on which state you're in. At the time, I was in Texas, and I knew that they had a reputation of being, almost Machiavellic or draconian, certainly in their ways of approaching it. And sure enough, that badge of honor was well earned. And they were extremely difficult to deal with. But alas, two things can be true at the same time. They can be both very difficult to deal with, and also looking out for the public, and also calling me out on my bullshit. Right? I mean, what you learn as an addict in recovery is you don't want to surround yourself with enablers. You want to surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to call you on your
Yeah,
bullcrap.
yeah,
And so I will say yes, absolutely 100%. If you're a physician or a professional
yeah.
that has some sort of a state board to deal with in the states, yes, seek help for sure. But a caveat to that is please realize that the state medical board is not your friend. That's what I would have to say about that.
And that's so important, isn't it? Absolutely. Is there a notification duty for your family physician? So once your family physician, for example, has found out that you as a doctor have been either abusing alcohol or drugs, is he forced to notify the medical board?
Uh, well, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Hmm,
That's good.
not
So
sure.
it is. So it is every situation will be different. One way or the other, you deserve help. If you're a doctor out there who is struggling, you deserve help because you're an amazing person. The sheer fact that you have provided so much of your passion, of yourself to your profession is is such a wonderful thing. And the same applies to a nurse. The same applies to so many other professions, a policeman, a soldier. And we are all the same kind of people who are going out there where we are trying to do the best, often under absolute difficult circumstances. And that with a baggage of childhood experience that were probably rather more adverse than not, etc. There is so much. The chances are stacked against us. And it's a surprise that not many more people are using and abusing drugs or alcohol. So that's normal, for Christ's sake. But is it really your best version of yourself, or could you not become a different version, a version that is more at peace inside, where there is less shame and guilt washing over you, where there's more joy, where there's less reliance on external chemical factors that to provide you that peace, but actually you figuring out how to live a life that is not eating you up and is destroying you as much as right now it is. You deserve help. I think that is the key message that I want to shout from the rooftops. And if you think you can't afford it, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about the finances, because here you were. I mean, I had a very, very good income. I, yeah, I worked really, really hard, and I had an tremendous, tremendous amount of gain. But I also spent on my family. I spent a lot of things. Never kind of shit like luxury cars or boats. But yeah, the money is there's not much left. How was it with you?
Well, let me say right quick something else. I want doctors, physicians, professionals who might be listening to hear and to understand. Um, Speaking from my own experience, I can't tell you the number of times that I thought to myself, well, I know I'm not an addict because a drug addict wouldn't be able to, um, go to work and show up to work on time. A drug addict wouldn't be able to complete this surgery and not have any negative outcomes. A drug
Yeah,
addict would
yeah,
not be able to
yeah,
this or that. And then, of course, at the time, I didn't know that two things can be true at the same time. But to physicians or professionals listening, yes, you can be a drug addict and still do almost anything. So don't let that be a reason that not that you're still in denial. Let me put it that way.
perfect.
Um, but for my finances, same with you. It sounds like I had a nice nest egg that I had already built, because I I did quite well, and but we didn't spend money a whole lot. So thankfully, and this is a huge blessing, we were able to use our savings to
Yeah,
keep us afloat.
nice, nice. There's and yeah, it for us that was not the case. So I had to sell about everything as part of the divorce anyhow. It's challenging. There are huge challenges in our transformations there. And there would have been a lot of dark nights of the soul. Here we were, defining ourselves by the professions that we were inside. And now everything that we defined ourselves by was gone. There are many men I later on talked to that, when I sort of told a little bit about the story, they looked at me, were a bit quiet, and then suddenly said, the only reason that I never took my life was that I didn't know how to explain it to my children, or that I didn't, their children was the only thing that stopped them from taking their lives. Did you have, did you go through dark nights of the soul in a similar way?
Oh my goodness. Um, yes. So I lost my job in the first week of April 2019. Um, Again, didn't go to rehab until the following summer.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah.
but I can't stress hard enough how difficult losing my identity as a physician, how difficult that was. And it's like that for many physicians, like you mentioned. Um, and then so many dark nights. And then I was actually out of work for a period of 4 years.
Wow.
So not only did I lose my identity as a physician, but I lost my identity
Wow.
as a provider. Um, I lost my identity as a husband. Um,
Wow.
all kind of rolled into one. So many, many dark days, dark nights during that time.
Oh,
Um,
Brett, brother,
yeah,
damn. If you
and
were now there and if we were in the same room, we would interrupt this interview and I would give you the hugest bear hug I could possibly give. This is brutal.
yeah, and unfortunately, continued to make some bad decisions in sobriety, and like you mentioned, I'm now going through a divorce. Um, and again, I'll speak just for myself. For me, losing my identity as a husband and provider for my family, that loss of identity is much worse than the loss that I suffered when being a physician was suddenly taken from me. For
Yeah,
me, it's the divorce has been much more difficult.
yeah. How interesting is that? The grieving for the living. I never really accept or even appreciated that. I saw a psychologist, a counselor, as you know, after things got really pear shaped with me, and especially with the divorce. So I had separated. I saw my counselor, and she said the very first thing she said, how's your grief? And I said, which grief? No one has died. What do you mean?
Hmm.
And I was completely blind to that aspect. And then later on, I had the privilege of interviewing a guest who she was in or is an expert on grieving for the living, and it's all that work allowed me to suddenly come to that realization that you have there, that you stated. This loss is so brutal because that's how I showed my love. As far as I'm concerned, I was the provider. I was the guy who brought the money in. I earned my respect from my family, at least in my warped mind, by being the provider. Not realizing that I would have had probably more respect had I actually spent more time with my children and did meaningful things, or had I worked on ways to satisfying the needs of my wife, figuring out what her love language is and actually responding in her language. These would have been such better investments. But no, I did not have that knowledge then. I haven't now. I guess that's the growth that we both were allowed to go through.
Yeah, I like to say, and it's completely accurate. I mean, I literally had the emotional intelligence of like a 14-year-old boy when I was active in my disease. And certainly before I went to rehab, I have since matured a little bit. I like to think I matured a little bit since then,
Yeah.
but it was, yeah, my emotional intelligence was something not to be desired.
Okay, guilty as charged, yes. But then again, we probably didn't have the role models that showed us that. We have had different role. Well, I had lack of a role model completely. I made them up as I went. My role models were Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon and Bruce Willis in Die Hard. So maybe talk about bad role models. Oh man. Ah. But then again, so okay, I need to ask that question because that is so important. What stopped you from giving up? Why are you still here?
um, yeah, I certainly, when my wife and I separated, the thought definitely crossed my mind that boy, things would be much easier if I just ended things.
Yeah.
What stopped me, and actually, I'll credit my wife with this of all people. She said, "You're still a father. Um, our kids need you. Our kids need you now. Our kids are never not going to need you in some capacity." And so, my kids prevented me from doing that, and the idea of not being able to meet my grandkids prevented me from doing that.
Yeah.
So nuclear family is my answer in
Yeah.
terms of what prevented me from ending it.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Oh, your wife, bloody hell. I'm in awe because so many divorces are less than amicable. And ultimately, the pain of betrayal leads also to them as the other partner potentially speaking quite negatively about you. And they're therefore driving a wedge in relationships between parents or the other parent and the children. Often children become the pawns in a divorce, and it's so beautiful to that has not become the 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 reality for you. Did your children accept that? Did your children, I mean, how is your relationship with your children now? Because after all, here you were the big dad, the you were probably
Hmm.
the superhuman in relation to them. Now that superhuman has had its wings clipped. Um, how are they looking at you now?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, it might help a little bit to hear that my son is 20 and my daughter's 18. So, it's a little different if your kids are 6 and 8.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but I'll tell you, not 1 month ago, my son told me how proud he was of me. Um, the resilience that I've shown,
Yeah.
which I would never in a million years give myself credit for. But he said I'm his hero because I've been through a world of hurt, and I'm still here. I'm still kicking. Um,
Oh,
and so our relationship is great. My daughter and myself, we also have a good relationship, but I suspect that she is harboring a large amount of anger and resentment. And
mm,
so, if, and I'm speaking in real time here,
yeah.
I feel like my daughter and my relationship is a little more shallow and superficial than it used to be, which is, of course, due to bad choices I made and the addiction. And hopefully, just showing up and letting her know as often as possible that I love her.
Yeah.
Hopefully, our relationship will improve and continue to improve.
I so hope this is true. And again, you were repeatedly saying, damn, what you say is 105% true for me as well. We must be the same two peas out of the same pot. My son is 24 and 22 now, and a similar kind of relationship, a similar kind of summary, so to speak. I think there's so much to be said about us being honest with ourselves, being true to ourselves. We have shown up not the best parents, inevitably, and therefore we need to take responsibility for that. Stop beating yourself up for it. I have never met a man who does not say he's a bad father. Okay, we are all thinking we are bad fathers. Doesn't matter what happened to you in your life. I think that's a given. But stop beating yourself about it. Again, the past does not equal the future. We have got every single day, we've got a possibility to maybe make amends if this is possible. If it is not possible, then at least come to terms with what has occurred. You can only be there, and for you to actually show up again, the showing up, taking action, integrity is defined as doing the right thing when no one is watching. I think that is the thing that the two of us are right now showing. What other people talk about is resilience. We, in our mind, see it as tiny baby steps every second, every minute to actually show up the right way. I think your life nowadays is far more humble, is far more authentic, is far more satisfying, I dare to say. than it has been in the past. Is that fair to say? Or am I on cuckoo land here?
Oh no, absolutely. That's once again you've hit the nail on the head.
It's isn't it? It's such a beautiful journey that we both have been on because we are the better men now. We are the better humans at the end. It just took a lot of pain and a lot of suffering to get there. But then again, it is now you're actually going out there to help people, to help doctors specifically, to not end up in the same story. Because nowadays, when we look at the satisfaction, job satisfaction, and life satisfaction of doctors out there, my God, the statistics are horrendous. 50% of doctors in the United States seem to be burned out or close to, and the other the other 50% are sort of just scratching in. And similar statistics will be around the world. Life is not getting better because we have got increasing pressures on on health resources, on political, religious, and climate instabilities. Whilst on the one hand, there are statistics to show us, oh, the life is actually getting better, so don't be such a negative dude. Well, on the other hand, there are enough negativity there that affects us. And you're helping doctors out there nowadays to maybe find a new balance. I guess that's a direct result of the journey that you and I have taken. We are now in a unique position to go out there and actually say, that has not worked. I have lots of experience what has not worked. And I now have
That's right.
figured out those things that do work. Maybe you should take note. Tell us a bit, A, what works, and B, how you're nowadays surviving, how you're nowadays living, how you're actually thriving, because we both are reinventing ourselves. We both are going out there and becoming new versions of ourselves, and I dare to say better versions of ourselves.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, when I went back to work, because again, I was out of work for 4 years. So I
Yeah.
went back to work in 2023 and I liked it, but I did not love it anymore. And, once again, I felt like I was having to grieve the loss of a career. But it was different this time because this time I I was in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Right.
And I could not deny the fact that I had lost my passion for clinical medicine. And so through fate, um, I learned about life coaching and specifically coaching other physicians
Yeah.
who were struggling with, symptoms of burnout. Um, that may or may not include substance abuse.
Yeah.
But basically, the little nugget of wisdom um, regarding the two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
There's 30 or 40 of those nuggets of wisdom that I can use with other physicians going through similar issues.
Yeah.
That I mean, there's such a perspective change. They're small, they're itty bitty perspective changes, each single one. But when you put them all together,
Exactly.
life is simpler, life is easier. And I had to learn that. It's a skill that I had to practice and to improve upon.
Beautiful. What are the low-hanging fruit for you nowadays? Or let me rephrase that question. If you wanted to jeopardize, to torpedo your own well-being, what is the most effective, two effective ways to do that?
Wow, what a phenomenal question. Well, I'll tell you one that I'm actively trying to ignore right now is previously I was always a fan of fancy sports cars, and I drove my share of fancy sports cars. And I would buy a fancy sports car, and it wasn't fast enough, so then I would take it to the uh, upgrade shop and make it even faster. Which is, when I think back on it, is just completely absurd. But I now drive a Toyota Tacoma, and I have started to feel just a little knock at the door in my head Boy, wouldn't it be fun to have one of those new Corvettes, one of those new Z06s? That is low hanging fruit for me. So, and apply this to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 other scenarios in life. And I am healthy when I am driving a Toyota Tacoma. Let's put it that way.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. I would have expected, let's focus on sleep, let's focus on hydration, but you're bringing it to the heart of the matter, how we tick on the inside. I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, for me, it is sleep. I'm nowadays fiercely defensive of my sleep. And I mean, recently my son is a PT in Aussie. I'm in New Zealand. So to get over there, only 2 hours, but 2 hours jet lag, bloody hell, I felt it. My sleep was deranged and my sleep scores, the quality of my sleep was certainly worse when I came back. And it's interesting how I felt. I mean, I feel right now, I feel 110% because I'm so infused and so invigorated by our discussion, by our community, by us being honest and authentic. This is like dopamine rush for me. I love it. Um, so that is good, and it's beautiful with good sleep. But it give me 2, 3, 4 nights in a row of bad sleep. Oh, that is starting to derail me. I'm not showing up at my best, and I think hydration is another one. But there's so many things. So there's a certain kind of baseline, or I shall say foundation, that we create with good habits. And then on top of that, you're already going for the jugular, where you're saying, actually, my particular problem is that striving for the 120%, in this case, the sports cars. Oh, God. Oh, man. I could talk with you for hours. Brett, this is amazing. You are an amazing man, and your transformation, both as a man as well as a human who has defined himself by being in one speciality. And for many of us, that is it. We are doctors. If you suddenly take that speciality away, my God, our life ends, literally, in many cases. Uh, you have proven that this is not the case. You can have a number of passions and professions. You can have a number of specialties in your life. And I think this is so beautiful. I don't think I've had many doctors who would admit that this is possible. And you are modeling it. And you're showing doctors that it's not the end if you're suddenly struggling with your profession due to whatever the reason is. It could be severe burnout in this case. So kudos to you, and a big thank you to you. I think I want to be speaking out here in the name of the whole doctor fraternity, that you point something very important out. It's not the end if you choose to change a career path, even in the middle of your life or towards the end of the life. Your professional life, I'm talking about here. Because I'm 58, I'm switching from anesthesiology, anesthesia, towards functional medicine. So a complete different field of medicine. I'm still a doctor, so that is beautiful. I love that. But at the same token, my previous life has completely died. That's a complete new life. I start from scratch. And you can do that, guys. And I think that is the message of hope. Never ever give up. Never ever give up, because there's so much you can do. Brett,
Yeah.
if people love what you said and love your honesty and your guidance and all those, where can they find you? Where can they make contact with you?
Perfect. So my website is theburnoutdoc.com. The
Uh-huh.
Burnout Doc. That's me, Brett Cordis, the Burnout Doc. And so that's my website, and then it's obvious how to get in touch with me
Yeah.
through there. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and might try to test the waters of YouTube, because I will leave this another little nugget of wisdom for the listeners. If you did appreciate what I said and you do want to get in touch with me, my hidden talent is that of a gangster rapper. So if that intrigues you, visit my website.
Excellent, excellent. Maybe I should do that with every guest. What's your hidden talent? Something
That's
I had
right.
not thought about. I like that, Brett. Okay, thank you for starting a new tradition in my podcast, in my show.
Don't
Brett,
mention it.
Brett, you're an amazing man. Thank you so much for your passion. Thank you so much for your authenticity. You showing up the way you are. You are a role model in a way that so few people can truly say they are. You're an amazing man. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.